Welcome into the Orlando Drummer Podcast, episode 9. I can't believe it's episode 9. It's weird we've sat here for 9 hours and talked about drums. It's a long time, isn't it, Chris?
Definitely more than 9 hours.
Yeah, if you're counting all the setup and then pre-talk before we start and then after. And
Yeah,
that's a lot of drum chat.
Yeah. And of course, the months and months of you talking about drums.
Well, yeah,
with me working for you.
The decades of talking about drums leading up to this. Yeah, but it's one of those things. I should probably mention this at some point too. You know, it's one of those things where the predetermined, super curated content that I made for a decade before launching this podcast, I don't want to say that got old, because I still very much enjoy like curating and thinking about and planning out content and making it, you know, just constructing the content so that it has a special delivery, so it hits a little bit different and feels a little bit different. But there is something really uniquely cool about like open long format discussions where I do find myself like enjoying this kind of content just in a different way. It's very apples and oranges. It's not the same as like writing a script and filming specific shots. It's very different, but I like it. I like the change. Feels right.
It's relaxed. It's great.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to open up to a question to anybody listening, anybody watching the podcast right
Sure.
now. If you didn't choose the drums, what instrument would you have chosen?
Interesting. That's actually a good question. Yeah, comment down below. Let us know what instrument. What was your backup instrument? What was the plan B instrument? What was yours, Chris?
It would have been piano.
Piano. That's a good one.
It's still percussive.
It is. It's technically a percussion instrument. Yeah. I also think it's like there's some sort of sex appeal for pianists that's like universal. Guys, girls, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Piano is sexy. That's a sexy instrument. Yeah. It's go ahead. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I agree with you on that. It's definitely sexy, whereas drums is like aggressive.
Drums is not. It could be sexual, but not sexy. Probably not a sex. It might be the least. That's a good question. Is drums the least sexy instrument ever?
No, the least sexy instrument is
the oboe. That's up there.
It has to be the tuba.
A tuba. Womp, womp, don't. Yeah.
Womp, womp, womp.
Yeah, that's not baby making music. That's not what that is.
Sorry for any tuba players out there. Huge respect to your lung capacity.
Oh yeah.
But it's
Shout out tuba players.
It's not sexy.
Yeah, I think my backup instrument would have likely been guitar, realistically, but I think another like top contender would be saxophone.
Oh yeah,
and for me, it's purely based off of the sound. Like I love the growliness of a saxophone. Like you can't growl on a lot of other instruments, but sax has like, I don't know, whatever that word brings out, like that wow, like that very specific growl that a saxophone can do.
Yeah,
I think that's just a dope like texture to have in an instrument, and you can't do that on drums, you know?
Yeah. And then being able to go alto or tenor sax.
Sure, all those ranges, yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Well, let me know if you had an instrument in mind instead of the drums, what you would have played.
Yeah.
And that'll roll us right into Player Puzzle.
Player Puzzle.
Which is my favorite thing to curate. I love doing this, by the way. I love the challenge of trying to stump you. It's a lot of fun, but it's also really challenging because for some of these drummers that are so unique, you know their style, and it's so hard to find clips of them playing where you won't be able to guess, or maybe you will.
Sometimes it's like if it's so specific and it's a drummer I love, there's such a good chance that I'll be able to guess it. And then at the same time, like I don't know every drummer in the world, so it's possible that he could pick one that I'm just like, I don't know who that person is, right? So, but they've been good so far. I think my favorite that like I wish I could have gotten, but I totally missed it, was Tony Royster. Yeah, like there was enough hints where like I should have gotten that and I didn't, and so I was kind of pissed at myself for that one. But I'm excited. So we got 2 more today.
Yes, we do. We got pretty much 2 a day. Any more than that, it's just be listening to drummers all day. The whole podcast.
Yeah.
But we'll go ahead. We'll start out with an audio clip.
Okay.
Today.
Player puzzle number 1. I heard telling stories. drums sound good. Doom, doom, doom. So controlled. That's what makes it very tricky. I don't know off of that. That was so tough because man, there's like hints of really high level stuff for sure. You could tell it's a ridiculous drummer, but that was not full throttle for them. I heard a whole lot of restraint, a lot of control, a lot of like holding back, which is tough. You don't get to hear all their entire, like the expanse of their vocabulary wasn't in there. So that's really tricky. Definitely, okay, so decent independence for sure. I say decent just based off of that clip, but very good independence. I don't know. I have no guess off of that one. I kind of have one guess, but I couldn't commit to it without hearing more. What's our next hint?
This drummer has played for Chaka Khan, New Kids on the Block, and Prince.
Okay, I think I know with Chaka Khan and Prince. New Kids on the Block, I'm not sure. But Chaka Khan and Prince, I think I know, but the kit photo will seal the deal on this player puzzle.
Oh, will it today?
You found some weird-ass setup that they only played once.
I found very interesting. A very interesting example today.
Okay.
Let's see if you can guess it with this kit photo.
Good God. Okay. Well, based off Sonar, Meinl, and putting the EC2 Evans heads on it, we're going to have to go Christopher Coleman.
No!
Not Chris Coleman?
Yeah. Okay. You got it.
I was like, no way.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris Coleman. Yeah, man. You picked a great clip that wasn't super telling. That was tricky. I heard a couple things. I wish I knew what they were specifically, but like little mannerisms were like, like maybe that was kind of him. Interesting. And so this kit is a weird one. I take it it's like a setup photo.
Yeah, it was taken from his Instagram, and it was just like getting ready to record
Gotcha.
Months and months ago. So I'd hope that would kind of throw you off, it not being totally set up all the way. Just the transition.
The Sonar, Meinl, Evans, Vic Firth setup is not one that a lot of people have. That roster of those four combined. I always think of Chris Coleman. I can't think of anybody else specifically that has those four companies that they play. This kit is interesting. I just watched something on it. The AQ2, but a Safari version, I think is what this is. I think it's Maple, though I'm not 100% sure, but it's AQ2, which is like their upper mid line, kind of an interesting little like price tier. And then much smaller sizes, which I actually like a lot. Really, really cool kit. I never had one of the AQ2 or the AQ1. I never had one here in the studio, but they're beautiful kits, man. Beautiful. Christopher Coleman. I met him many times. He's super dope. Such a good dude. And just a scary, scary musician. Way too good. Way too good. One of the best alive, to be honest. In my top 3 forever.
Wow, top 3.
Yeah, I put in top 3.
Something.
Yeah.
All right. Next little audio clip here.
All right. Okay, so I have a guess, but that last fill, a little Herta thing, that doesn't sound like the guy I was thinking of. So it might not be him. I'll give a hint to anybody listening. My guess, their initials are NB would be their initials, but I might be wrong on that one. He's also got a specific kit sound, like an audio sound that I didn't recognize there. But he does, the drummer I'm thinking of with the initials NB, he does play with the strange click, right, where it's like not a normal metronome. So that was in 7, but it was I've never gotten into playing clicks like that. It's too much of a puzzle. Well, we're in player puzzles, so that was probably the correct clip to choose. I'm gonna need a little more on that one. What's our next hint?
The hint is that before becoming a professional drummer, they worked as an IT employee for a consulting firm. Yeah.
That's tough. That just means you're smart and nerdy, which makes you a good drummer sometimes, right? Like, attention to detail, huh? You'd be good at drums. I gotta do kit photo. I don't know from that one. I should. That's actually a really good hint.
All right. So essentially kit photo.
Okay, got the kit photo. Weird. So this is a baller sonar SQ2. No, it's a Pro Light. Okay. Oh, okay. And Zildjian, that's helpful too. With Zildjian. So, man, look at that. Is that like a 12 by 8 tom on the floor? Like the chocolate version of this orange wild kit? Okay. Oh, it's different finishes. Man, I like the ones on the floor more than the kit itself.
Yeah, that bottom finish.
Oh, man, that bottom right, too.
So cool.
That is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, so this was probably at NAMM based off the fact that it's a display. And 5-piece kit with Zildjian, and then artists who would be asked to perform at like the Sonar booth. And Pro Light, I think I'm going to go Aaron Spears. Did I get it? Yeah. Aaron Spears.
Yeah.
It's weird. He hasn't been a Sonar artist that long, so he doesn't come to mind immediately. Aaron's been in... He's been in this studio. Him and I are both ClearTune in-ear monitor endorsers.
Yeah.
I actually play his signature... I use his signature in-ears, the AS7s. So yeah, him and I have talked Sonar quite a bit, and man, he's a awesome dude, awesome player, and yeah, that was a tricky one. That was really, really tough. Man, he's played with. He's got such an eclectic style. He's a hard one to pin down too, because like you might just throw him in the gospel chops category, but it's really hard to do that because that is definitely not the only kind of thing that he plays.
Yeah,
I mean, he's got one of the biggest gigs in the world with a pop singer. So
with Ariana. Yeah.
Ariana gig, man. That's like gig of a lifetime. You know how?
Of course,
so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh my good. He posts videos too. If you haven't seen him, he posts some really cool. Like throws a GoPro on stage in the stadium with an Ariana Grande gig, which is that's a crazy like POV camera to have there. To see. Very few drummers in the world get to experience what that's like to play with somebody that famous, that big. It's amazing, man. He deserves it. He's been in the game a long time.
Yeah, his caught up video.
It's like one of the most viewed drum videos of all time.
It's one of the best drum performances I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, and I love Usher too. I wear Usher's cologne. No joke. I've worn it like for 10 years. I've worn Usher's cologne.
It's insane. You should do another tour.
Yeah, I'd go to that. That'd be awesome.
All right, cool. So that'll close out Player Puzzle. We weren't able to stump Adam this time, but maybe next time.
Never again.
All right. We'll move on to another one. We get to talk a little bit more. Accent or Ghost?
Accent or Ghost?
Accent or Ghost. So if you're not familiar with this segment, we'll just explain it very quickly. I'll introduce Adam with a topic or a photo or a video or something like that, and we'll get his approval, an accent, or a disapproval, a ghost. So first up is, what do you feel about light up drums?
Light up drums, like Casey Cooper works with a company that they do that. Is it called like Drumlight? It's something pretty straightforward. It's like an LED kit that you can buy. And is it battery powered? See, that's where it gets a little weird, right? Like, where do the wires go? Is this battery powered? That'd be a little smarter. I think it's cool. I think it's cool when they're triggered against playing live and you put it in an acrylic kit, which is kind of how Casey did it. I think that's really cool. I think it is definitely unnecessary, but so many things about live performances are unnecessary. You know what else is unnecessary? Pyrotechnics is unnecessary, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? It's also very cool. Yeah, I would say leave that stuff for live. I think it's like a videographer's nightmare to have. I would never want that in my kit now. It just seems like a lighting catastrophe or like a camera setting nightmare sort of thing. But I also think there might be something you could do, like shoot down the middle, where you put very soft white lights inside drums that are like not see-through, so they're just wooden drums with like thinner coated heads, so you'd have like a glow coming out of them.
Basically a diffuser.
Yeah, the drum would be the softbox. Yeah, that would be kind of cool. I've definitely put small lights underneath a drum to have some light come through it before, but it was more so just to like create kind of like you're saying, like a softbox kind of glow instead of some like obvious visual effect. I think it's cool. But I would say just be careful. I don't know that I would like somebody that like branded their online content with that. It's just extreme.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, what do you think about that? I've seen that going through Instagram.
People doing that?
I mean, you've got, lights on the drums and around the drums and lighting that they put in their videos. But
yeah,
drums that light up themselves, I feel like they can be really distracting.
It can be distracting. I'm a minimalist. I'd rather have less stuff that is of like a higher quality and that is a little bit more on the timeless side, as opposed to somebody who like has, I don't know, neon green, everything all over the place. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to pick on like Aaron Edgar, right? Who's got like a very loud room. At the same time, it's very, he's a buddy of mine, by the way. What's up, Aaron? It's one of those things where it's like, it's just personal preference. Like your character should be in your drum set, in your content, in your whole setup, right? Yeah, it should be your character. For me, personally, I would ghost drum lights. Just on like, it feels attention-seeking-y, kind of like that. I'd rather have like a classy, minimalist, clean sort of setup in, whether that's live or in the studio. That's just the direction I would go. But I'd say if you own it, if you rock it, if it's, if that's your jam and that's what you want to do, especially live, if you're playing like EDM, that's where I'd put it in. Like an EDM show. Yeah, I'd put the lights in there for sure. So I'll give it the accent overall. Not for me in this studio, but in general, yeah, gets an accent.
Okay. And then I sent you a video for our next little topic here.
Okay. All right. What in the hell is this thing? Whoa. So they cut them to different sizes. Interesting. Okay, so first impression, the bell sucks. That was not good. That bell did not sound good at all, which is okay. I mean, it's got a lot of function. The bell wasn't good, and I didn't like the crash, the actual crash. But the idea that you would pizza slice out a cymbal like that is very interesting because it almost had like a tonal scale to it. Maybe not quite a scale, but clearly what they did was like slice in enough to where, at least at like different distances. So each one of those has like its own tone. And I would imagine those holes that they put a little bit further in at the end of the cuts are to prevent the cracks from spreading, right? Because those cracks would open up and eventually the cracks would meet somewhere in the middle, and then you would just have two pieces of metal break in half. So who makes this?
So this is their Instagram is emjmod_cymbals. It's a Japanese, we'll call it a manufacturer for basically modified cymbals. They take Zildjians, Istanbuls, Meinl Cymbals, and then they kind of cut them up to modify them for certain tonal qualities.
Interesting.
And so he's got a couple patents pending, I guess, for this cymbal in particular.
Weird. Yeah, it's a cool idea. I think I'll give it the accent right away. I mean, I don't mind people experimenting with these sort of strange ideas. I think this would have far more of a use in an obscure studio setting. So if you had like a weird album that you were recording and you needed some like spooky sort of cymbal-y effects, you could definitely put a super high-end mic right above this thing and get some weird tones out of it. I could hear that for sure. I think in a gigging situation, probably not. I really don't know that it would be that useful. But I would say recording environment, it would have to get the accent. I think that you would find a lot of use for it for sure. And I'm also interested in if there was any like math that they had to do to get the tones to be somewhat similar, like a wind chime. Like you buy a wind chime and it's in a key, right? Where they're not just like random notes. Like they have to do some sort of math game on like a wind chime where the length of the pipe, the diameter of the pipe, the thickness of the walls of the pipe would all give you a certain fundamental frequency. And you'd have to know that for each one of those pipes in a wind chime. And this felt kind of like that. Like they must have done some spacing math to know where to cut these like pie slices or pizza slices of the cymbal. Interesting. I'd love to know like some of the thoughts of the guy or the team of whoever people made this. But yeah, really cool. I'll give it the accent. That's dope.
You could also use it in an orchestral setting too.
Yeah, that too. A lot more like individual cymbal work, right? That you would do in that kind of setting.
Yeah. Which, I mean, to carry around probably one cymbal with perfect tonal qualities to it and maybe a scale would be better than carrying around a heavy case of bells or giant chimes for that matter.
Yeah.
Which are not fun to load in and out.
Yeah, those are bad, right? Those are bad. Because you did tour with it was like a kid's...
Yeah. I did a tour with a youth orchestra.
Youth orchestra. Sorry, a kid's thing. You know what I mean? You get it.
A kid's thing.
Yeah.
We went to Germany. We went to China in 2019. Yep. Carried around some bells and chimes and timpani. And I gotta say, if you think that loading your drums in and out of any gig that is, by yourself,
or slinging a timpani through
you
China, give it a shot.
Stop your crying because like even like a range 3 or 4 timpani is just it's a monster.
Yeah, that's a massive drum, man.
They're crazy. But anyway, last topic on Accent or Ghost.
Okay.
A bass drum woofer.
Bass drum woofer. Oh, so like the sub kick? Is that kind of what they call them?
It's basically another kick in front of your kick drum.
Yeah.
Where DW did this back in 2004.
Yeah, I remember when they got popular a while ago. It's interesting. So I guess what I don't fully understand is it for live or recording? Is it audible without electricity? Does that make sense? Does it give an acoustic benefit in the room?
I think so, right? Because the way DW put it was that you can now hear an additional amount of low-end frequencies because of the air being reverberated by your reso head from your main kick.
Gotcha.
Pushes the batter head on the woofer, which then circulates air within that woofer, which is thinner, kind of like a pancake drum.
Yes.
So maybe...
So there's also two kinds of this that I'm curious about. One of them looks like a snare that goes
right in front, right?
In front of in front of the porthole of your bass drum. And the other one, though, I've seen this, is a little more ridiculous. It's like an extender for your entire kick drum.
Yeah, it's the same diameter as your kick drum.
The same diameter,
just like an inch in front of it, and then that's like 4 inches deep.
See, it feels like if you have to do that, if you're missing so much low end, that you have to like either extend your kick drum or use some device to enhance the low end, like to that degree. For me, that's over the line where it's like, it's time for a new drum set. It's time for a new kick drum, right? Like maybe you need some mahogany down there. Maybe you need a couple extra plies to get a little bit more punch. So for me, that sounds like an upsell that I don't want. I think I have heard kick drums in person that are mind-blowing. Like they sound pre-EQ'd, pre-compressed. They like pass through your chest like you got shot with a shotgun. Like they're super powerful. And I can't imagine taking one of those like unbelievable kick drums that I've played. One that comes to mind was a 22-inch Birch Babinga Star Classic that I heard from my buddy Mikey Bolko years ago, worked at Sam Ash with me years ago. He had a kick drum that was just like, if you don't like this kick drum, like you suck.
You're insane.
You're insane.
Yeah.
It was that. I mean, some of them can get that dialed. They sound that good. And I can't imagine hearing that and being like, no, not low enough for me. Like, you just need a new drum set then. If that's how you feel about your kick, where like you're starting to add on and extend to the edge of, I'm not into that. Now, studio stuff, everything's a little different because you might need some sound that is beyond what an acoustic drum set could do, no matter what the wood is, no matter what the plies are, no matter what head you choose. But I would say just purely like acoustic drums and live drumming and just practice stuff, if you don't like your kick drum sound enough that you're going to go buy something like that, I think your money would be better spent on a better kit, or a kit that's more closely aligned with like your personal preferences. So yeah, I think I'm going to give it the Ghost. I've never been interested in those. And even in seeing them, I'm not even interested enough to like find out exactly what they do. I'm just like, it's, whatever. I'll give that the Ghost, I think. Yeah.
All right. Too bad, bass drum woofers. Cool. That'll finish up Back Center Ghost. That'll move us right on into Sleeper Spotlight.
Sleeper Spotlight.
Another fun one. I could
right.
scour the internet and find drummers that y'all are sleeping on.
Aaron Spears.
Yes. Nobody knows who that guy is. And then we'll get Adam's opinions, impressions, and any constructive criticism that he might have.
Well, yeah.
Cool. So this week, go ahead and start out with HasDrums, a little outside video for today.
HasDrums, the outside video. 16 seconds?
Yeah, pretty short. Pretty short.
Shorty from him. All right, here we go. Leopard skin. Cool, man. That is a wild kit. First of all, that's a bold statement for a drum set. Man, that thing is. I like drum sets that you can spot a mile away. I do like that. I think that's really cool. Do I want it? I don't think so, but it's a pretty kit. Also, I like your top right crash, that Evolution from Sabian. Some of the highest quality cymbals that Sabian makes. I used to have those back in the day. Beautiful cymbal, man, for sure. So this clip, I'm going to watch it one more time before I say anything, actually. 16 seconds. Let's play it back one more time. The kit sounds good, too. It's pretty dialed in. Cool. So I think one thing, it's a piece of advice I've given to many people on this segment before, is that I can hear you reaching to the upper ends of your skill set, for sure. And a lot of times what I like to see is like a little bit more self-control, in that if your playing can go to a 10, like choose to make it a 7 sometimes, because the ideas will land a little bit cleaner. So I can hear that you're reaching for some of those ideas. But with that said, what I can hear in this clip is very good. Your 6-stroke roll is super, super clean. Overall, man, I think your technique is really, really good. This sounds very clean, and I hear a good amount of power in your playing, where you're not light-handed. You're naturally a little bit heavier-handed, and I personally like that quality in pretty much all drummers for the most part. I like when people play through the kit. I also think kits sound better when you play that way, unless they're like tuned to be played lightly, like kind of a jazz kit with higher tunings and very high resonance. I think a lot of times when you have a more modern drum set, they just sound good when you lay into them, and you're playing with a lot of power, so I like that. Let's do the next clip from him. This is the red kit?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that one. Cool, tricky. Super clean, man. Real tight playing. Cool, that was awesome. Yeah, very trapped out, very clean. I love when people take like hip hop drumming and make it sort of a part of their style, because hip hop, I mean, I suppose you could find all these weird crossovers where acoustic drummers did play huge roles in what hip hop drumming is. But also, if you're going modern hip hop, like trap music, there's so many elements of that style of music that are not like natural for a human to play. So it takes a lot of like reverse engineering about like, wait a minute, what was that weird robotic subdivision change that sort of happened? And it's making its way from like the electronic drumming world. It's making its way into people's playing. And so I hear some ideas that definitely wouldn't have been popular like 20 or 30 years ago. And I like that. I think that's really cool. I also hear that your kit sound matches like what your what your playing style is, in that your kit is very tight and articulate and modern, and your playing ideas are very tight and articulate and modern. And I think that is a really, really cool thing that you have going on, that the sound of your hats, the sound of your snare, the sound of your bass drum, using that stack to sort of embellish some of those little trap elements, combined with what you're playing, I think all of that fits together really well. So I see a very cohesive sound and style that is very like, it just in that modern, trappy hip-hop sort of realm. So cool. It's really cool, man. I like it a lot. I also like your shallow little floor tom here. I think that's cool. I like shallow floor toms a lot, a little punchy. But yeah, man, that was a good one. Very cool.
Cool. That was HasDrums.
HasDrums. Check them out.
Has_drums on Instagram. Okay. Cool. Next up is Team DeMaio. Hope I'm not butchering that last word.
Okay.
Got one video from him. Choose the one with the little rolling pad thing in the
rolling
video.
Pad. Here we go. I hear see Latin Pro on the SPD. I hear it coming. Weird. He's got a lot of effects happening. Man, what would you call that style of groove?
It seemed Latin-ish, real constant, real kind of drivey, and then he's got like this massive amount of reverb on the whole track that's just kind of spacey and weird.
Yeah, it was like Latin experimental house or something like that, right? Like,
yeah, almost like a deep house kind of music.
Yeah, deep house Latin maybe. That was interesting. I got really caught up in just the style of what he was playing, trying to be like, it's hard to pin down what exactly is happening, but I also think that's really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, real tricky.
Very tricky. He had a lot of good independence in there for sure. There was a few moments where he really dug into the eighth notes on the hi-hat, or I don't know that they were eighth notes. I'd have to listen back and count, but he chose to embellish and pull out certain elements. It's one of those things where, like, if there's multiple elements inside of a groove happening, you know, one trick that you can do to like paint a different picture with your groove is to consciously bring up the volume of one of those elements or one of those textures inside of the groove. And I saw him do that a couple times, which is definitely a higher level way to think about how you present a groove or, you know, paint this musical picture. So that was really, really cool. Tough for me to say anything about like technique or anything like that, or even kit sound, right? Because this was such like an art piece was this clip. It looks like it's a sonar from the lugs on.
Yeah, I can't tell.
It looks like a sonar, but I'm not 100% sure. Interesting, though. Also, it's funny, we were talking about lighting earlier, and I kind of like this purplish blue glow vibe that he has going on. It's a good example of how you can kind of brand your videos and get a little bit of a look happening with some lights there. Interesting. So let's go to the next clip from him. Cool. Yeah, I like how he's a bit more of like a storyteller of a groover, because I heard some elements of the groove, doon doon got ding ding got doon got right, where he would do the bell like those two hits, and then the next measure he would like shoulder the ride cymbal with that little big fat snare drum-ish assembly thing that's hanging off of it, right? And so those ideas take a little bit of patience to execute, right? Like you have to think about every other bar I'm going to do this, and then every other bar I'm going to do this. And spacing out your ideas like that is a very storyteller-ish way to approach grooving. And I like that because it shows me that he plays with a lot of intention, right? Like he is thinking about what he plays well beyond just the note that he's on, right? It's not just like a artist living in the moment, this is my expression. Like there's a little bit more of like a tactical approach to it, because you have to have that if you're going to play a groove that takes 2 measures or 4 measures to resolve itself. And this is something that's actually a little bit harder for me to do, is to be very intentional about what I'm playing now, because I know I'm going to contrast it with something a little later in the story, a little later in the music. So I really liked that. I also think his setup is really cool. He seems very into not only recording, but also like this presenting like a complex musical sound. I can hear his drums are mixed in some interesting ways, and I'd love to hear him use that SPDX a lot more. But overall, really cool, man. Interesting stuff. I imagine he's got a lot of videos that are all very different.
Yeah.
Something along those lines?
Yeah, and I tried to find kind of a good range of things, but
yeah, those videos weren't too similar. Yeah,
very different drummer too to have on. Typically we have guys that shred like crazy, but I thought
Choppers.
Somebody more consistent was also worth showing.
Sure, absolutely. Also, these guys tend to make a little more money than people who chop out all the time.
Yes.
So there's that too.
Yes.
This is the guy you hire, by the way. Yeah, man, really, really cool. I'd love to check out some more of his videos and see everything he's got going on. But awesome ones today, man. Very cool.
Cool. All right, that'll end it.
Oh yeah.
Now we get to move on to Q&A.
Q&A.
So any of these questions, if you'd like to ask us questions for this Q&A segment of the podcast, you can comment down below on YouTube. You can send them to Adam via Instagram. You can send them directly to me at chris@orlandodrummer.com, or you can even write questions in the forums of orlandodrummer.com. First question from Sid Hearthsenal.
Okay.
How did you come up with the name The Orlando Drummer?
So, interesting one. So, I first started, let's see, I got to take you through the timeline of when I actually started working in the drum industry. I was doing private lessons full-time back in 2009-ish, 2009, 2010. And I had taught at a family enrichment center was what it was called. It was basically like an after-school program for rich white kids, I guess you'd call it. I mean, they had like photography classes for 6-year-olds. It was a weird kind of place. It was that sort of like cooking classes for like kids in 3rd and 4th grade. But they had a music program, and I taught very beginner level drums, guitar, and piano. And I was suited for that job because I could teach a 6-year-old even back then. And then I started booking privately. There were people who had either moved or had left that school, and they still wanted their kid to study with me. They were like 9 and 10 years old back then. Yes, it was as early as 2009, long time ago. And eventually, I wanted to make some sort of website for booking where people could see my schedule and prices and have some sort of bio. And I thought, man, maybe I could actually get some students. So I searched many different names, combining the words Orlando and drum stuff. And I eventually came to Orlando Drummer, and I made that website. And obviously, the rest is history. Eventually, I went online, and I sort of kept that name, Orlando Drummer. But I can tell you one thing that I regret about the name Orlando Drummer is that, one, I ended up starting a business that is worldwide, and I have the city in my name, which does not make a lot of sense. By the time I realized this and tried to fix it, it was too late, right? It was like I had to basically start over, and I thought that would be a worse decision to make. But where I feel where I feel bad about this name is that if you are looking for a drummer in Orlando and you Google any combination of the words Orlando and drummer, I kind of dominate the first like 20 pages of Google, and I feel really bad because I don't play gigs locally. So I'm not the guy you're looking for. The guy you're looking for is on page 53, and he totally deserves to be found if he is gigging locally and he's a drummer in Orlando. So part of me is sort of like, oh man, like I didn't mean to do that necessarily, but that's just kind of what ended up happening. So, and I've also thought before, you know, if I ever moved, would I change it? I almost moved to Atlanta maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, and I didn't, but I was really on the fence of like, should I buy atlantadrummer.com? Like that seems like a bad idea. Anyway, at this point, I don't think I'm making any changes. I think it'll always be like a nod to the time when I was a full-time teacher here in Orlando, because that was probably 5 to 7 years of my life was riding around on a motorcycle doing private drum lessons in this city. And if it wasn't for that, experience, and if it wasn't for this URL, OrlandoDrummer.com, I probably wouldn't have the same career that I have. So I owe something to this city and the private drum lessons that I gave here, those students and those families. So that's why it's still Orlando Drummer. But if you're just starting a brand now, don't put your city in it, because if this goes as well as possible, you'll probably want to expand outside your city at some point. And you don't want to be in my position. So yeah, that's where it came from, though.
The city beautiful, as we call it. And last question by d.art.dv.05_15.
Ooh, I'll remember that name.
Yeah.
Touch complicated.
This is a good one.
Okay.
Why do you prefer single over double bass?
Sure. So first and foremost, style is the biggest one. I think if you're playing a style where it's required to play double bass, that's why you should play double bass. It really just comes down to that. So for me, I don't play any styles of music where it is totally necessary for me to have a double bass pedal. And I have done some metal stuff with Nick DiPiero. I've done a couple metal songs with him. But again, I don't need double bass to make those happen necessarily. So style is the number one thing that will determine whether or not you should go buy a double bass pedal. I think the other reason, though, is that if you never ever bought one, you would still have enough shit to do with your left foot that you don't ever have to worry about, your left foot playing like the bass drum against your right foot. That is a whole skill set. It's a whole category. And yes, you could spend your entire life getting good at double bass things. You definitely could do that if you wanted to do that. But again, that's all style dependent. For me, I look at it as though I have so much work to do with my left foot, and controlling the instrument that is the hi-hat, that alone could be the next 20 or 30 or 50 years of my playing, right? Especially if we're going to open this up to like splash close techniques or just the concept of left foot independence. That alone could take decades and decades and decades to learn all the things that I might want to learn. So the idea that I would stop working on that so I could play, a double bass pedal, man, I would really have to be in love with some specific genres that required that, because I just feel like I have too much work to do on my left foot as it pertains to the hi-hat specifically. So that's kind of where I am. But I do wonder sometimes if there are mannerisms or textures in my playing that would be very cool, but I'll never know what they are unless I have a double bass pedal. So there is a part of me that wants to try it. I don't think I would ever turn into a metal player. I'm just not that into metal to do something like that. But I wonder if there would be like little mannerisms and textures and things like that would come out, because it's like, oh, you actually can play some other things with a double bass pedal, even if it's not, like doom metal or whatever, people are, whatever the kids are playing nowadays. I don't know. So yeah, for me, that's the main reason, genre. And then just below that would be that I got too much stuff to do with my left foot on the hi-hat anyway. So that's my answer. But good question, man. Good question. One everybody has to answer on their own,
Cool. All right. Well, that'll do it for Q&A. And I'll leave it to you to close out the podcast.
All right. So let's close out today with a little bit of a chat about endorsements. This is a topic I've talked about many, many, many times. I've gone into it in my social media masterclass on OrlandoDrummer.com. I've talked about it. There's a YouTube video specifically. It came out probably 3 or 4 years ago. I think 5 things you need to know about endorsements. It's on this YouTube channel, or my YouTube channel. And it's a topic I want to revisit here just briefly, because it is so commonly misunderstood how endorsements actually work. I think a lot of times drummers younger drummers especially, will use endorsements as like this, it's the goal. They set it as like the light at the end of the tunnel, that if everything goes well, I would end up being endorsed, and then boom, like the sky opens up and everything happens for you. In reality, you have to be successful first before the endorsements even come. And endorsements that come your way, opportunities like that come your way before you are measurably successful, are ones that you should be very skeptical of, right? Because think of an endorsement like a business deal. You are offering something of value to a company, and in exchange, they are offering something of value to you, right? So everybody has to bring something to the table here. And if you are not bringing anything to the table yet, because you're early on in your career, That's okay. That's okay. But it also means that you're probably not ready for an endorsement because you don't have anything super valuable to offer this company just yet. And if that's your reality, that's not a big deal. That is where everyone starts, and it's where a vast majority of drummers find themselves, where they don't quite have enough value to offer a company, where that company would want to brand themselves alongside you or give you discounted gear or free gear in some cases. That just might not be the position that you're in, and that is totally, totally okay. But I can tell you one thing that I see a lot of people doing wrong, and that is sort of racing towards endorsements. The reason this is so problematic is because if you're going to say yes to the first endorsement offer that comes in, that offer is probably not going to be too great. Sure, it might have a little bit of a discount on gear, but if it's one where the company still profits, I think you should question that a little bit, because ultimately you're still a client, right? Not necessarily an artist. It's not as collaborative. It's a little more like they're still selling you stuff. And that's a whole topic for another day. A lot of companies are guilty of doing that sort of thing. But I think when you race towards an endorsement, what ends up happening is that you'll take a deal where you don't have a lot of leverage in that deal. You're not offering anything that valuable that they couldn't get from a lot of other people that might be in your position. And if you think about this in a different way, what happens if you are the guy who turns down all of the endorsements for 10 years, for 15 years? By the time these companies are interested in you, they'll end up making you offers where you have all the leverage, because now they've knocked on your door, not vice versa. And that is a really enviable position to be in when companies are seeking your endorsement, not quite vice versa. I think that's the most ideal, that's the optimal position to be in, especially from a business standpoint. And let's be honest, these are business deals. So I really like the idea of not even seeking endorsements for a very long time. And I know that stings as a young drummer, who maybe is really excited about that possibly happening in the next year or two. But just imagine if you could wait another 2 or 3 years, and then these companies, they come to find you. You're not the guy asking to be endorsed. You're the one that they're seeking because you have made so much noise, you've made so much of an impact in the industry that they can't possibly ignore you. There's a quote from the comedian Steve Martin, where something along the lines of that, I'll throw it on the screen if I can find it, but it's something along the lines of make so much noise, be such a force in your industry that you can't possibly be ignored. And I like that approach so much more than the one where you make a little tiny bit of noise, and the moment you have some traction, you go knocking on all the doors to see who will take a bite. I think the opposite approach is really the way to go. And trust me, if you have something to offer this industry, the drum industry, and it's well received, it is a matter of time before companies come knocking. They are always looking. They're deeply plugged into the industry. So if you're wondering if they'll ever see you, if they'll ever catch wind of your videos or your content or your playing or this album, they will. They're looking all the time, but sometimes you have to exercise a lot of patience. And my message today is that it is so deeply in your favor to be patient when it comes to endorsements. Don't rush them. Don't take the first deal or the second or the third that comes your way unless it is truly what you want. And in my experience, the longer you wait, the more leverage you have, the greater value you offer that company, and everyone ends up being more excited and happier about these deals when they happen. So let them build. Grow your brand, grow yourself, grow as a drummer, grow as a person. And by the time that deal happens, you'll just be in a really, really good position. So that's some general thoughts on endorsements. We could expand down the road, but any endorsement questions, shoot them over. We could, we could go deeper into this topic.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And just to mention, every company's different too. I've got a different relationship with every single company I work with. How I became endorsed, what the deal looks like, how I interact with them is different with every company. I think people don't realize that too. They think it's like there's some generic contract that like a drummer signs with the universe. They're all unique business relationships. So that might be a fun thing to explore later too.
Yeah. Well, even with like CTM, they're in town, right?
Yeah, that makes it different too.
We can go and visit them, and we'd have. And they're a very, very beautiful set of people that are making that company as successful as it is.
That's a family vibe
in comparison to your conversations and the relationship you have with Chris Brewer over at Meinl.
Yeah, that's much more. I mean, it's a family vibe, but it's not the same. It's not like a single family working locally here. Yeah, it's very different. And then there's who else? Like Earthworks is another one where it's not necessarily a family vibe, but it is a small town where they operate out of, and they're far away. So I've only met them briefly at NAMM, but like their approaches to everything, it's all different. Each one is totally different. I think people miss that a lot. They don't understand that like each relationship you have with one of these companies, totally different from another. So yeah, we'll get into this. Maybe we'll open this up on another podcast and explore a little bit about what some of those relationships look like. Maybe some do's and don'ts, things like that. Well, that's it. That's all we got for episode 9, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.
Oh yeah, we will catch you guys next week. Much appreciated.
Bye.
Bye.